The suitcase wasn't mine. It was sitting in our hallway, dark blue, dented, and zipped with precision. Not thrown in a rush. Not packed in panic. It had been planned. Intentionally. Quietly. I stood there in my socks, holding a dripping bowl of cereal, watching water collect on the hardwood floor while her suitcase sat like a message that didn't need words. No note. No call. Just her suitcase and a scent in the air I didn't recognize. Lavender and smoke. Someone else's cologne. Not mine. Never mine. The bedroom door was open. Too open. The kind of open that dares you to walk in. Her favorite necklace was gone from the hook. Her nightshirt, the faded gray one with the bleach stain, folded neatly on the dresser. That was the worst part. She folded it. You don't fold things when you're angry. You don't fold things when you're done. You fold them when you still want to look good while you destroy someone. I walked outside and sat on the porch in the rain like an idiot. The cereal soaked into my pants. The neighbors probably saw me, but I didn't care. I stared at her car's empty space in the driveway and thought, this is how wars begin. Quietly. Through organization. She had organized me out of her life. 3 days later, I saw the photo. It was sent anonymously, no subject, no message. Just a single email with a JPEG attachment titled, Thought You Should Know.jpg. I don't even remember opening it. It was taken through a window. Blurry. But it was her. My wife. Sitting on someone else's lap. Laughing. Laughing. That's when I cracked. Not because she was cheating. Not because she left. But because she looked happy doing it. I emptied my bank account. All of it. Even the petty savings I was hiding for our anniversary trip she kept postponing. I vanished. I didn't storm out. I didn't smash dishes or scream or send a dramatic group text. I became what I always was to her in the end, invisible. I bought a one-way bus ticket to a town I couldn't pronounce and didn't want to. I left my phone on the bus seat next to a stranger and walked away while it rang. For a long time I thought disappearing was freedom. That turning myself into a ghost would finally give me peace. But ghosts don't rest. Ghosts remember everything. Ghosts still check shadows to see if someone's following. Because someone did. And months later, when I thought I'd buried every version of myself, she found me. And she didn't come alone. I was sweeping gravel off the front step of the shack I now call home when I heard the sound I never expected to hear again. Tires crunching slowly over the dirt road. Deliberate. Hesitant. Like someone testing the weight of their presence in a place they knew they didn't belong. It wasn't a local car. People here don't creep. They roar in pickups, wave with 2 fingers, and leave their engines idling. This car came in like a question. Soft, unsure, but loud enough to rupture the silence I'd built like a shelter around myself. I didn't even turn around. I just stood there, holding a half-broken broom, staring at a moth that had died on my windowsill overnight. And then she spoke. Darvin? Her voice was smaller than I remembered. Like she'd practiced it too many times and lost the confidence to use it. I turned slowly, unwillingly. And there she was. Triss, standing 10 feet away, hair darker than before, lips chapped, eyes haunted. She looked like someone who'd come to confess at a church that had already burned down. I didn't say a word. I wanted to. My brain screamed a dozen bitter lines. You packed your bags like a vacation. You folded your goodbye. You laughed on his lap. But my throat was full of sawdust and disbelief. I hadn't seen another human in over 2 weeks, and now the one person I tried to erase had the nerve to walk right into the remains of my exile. I know you don't want to see me, she said quickly, rushing the words as if speeding through them could protect her from my silence. I'm not here to fix anything. I didn't know what else to do. You disappeared. You left without saying goodbye. She said that like it was a crime. Like she hadn't ghosted me in my own marriage months before I ever left physically. I didn't think goodbye was required after you left, I said, my voice gravelly from disuse. You made your decision. I made mine. She looked down. Her hands trembled, clutching her phone like it was some kind of shield. I deserve that. I deserve worse. Then go find it somewhere else. That should have been it. Curtain down. Scene over. But no. Of course not. Triss never did anything cleanly. She stepped forward like I hadn't just told her to leave, like she had every right to still take up space near me. I came alone, she said softly. He's not. I mean, I ended it. A long time ago. It wasn't what you think. Wasn't what I think? I laughed, a sharp, ugly sound that surprised even me. Do I strike you as someone who's been overthinking things the past year? Do I look like I've been sitting here with corkboards and red string, trying to piece together the mystery of how you torched our life? She flinched. Good. Then she whispered something that made the air between us freeze. You were right about the hotel. But you were wrong about why. I didn't move. Didn't blink. My ribs tightened around my lungs like a cage. She kept going. It wasn't just about him. I was going to leave. Officially. That weekend. I'd packed everything. I even had a lawyer ready to go. I didn't want to hurt you more than I already had. I just wanted to disappear. I thought it'd be easier if I made you hate me. My laugh this time was colder. Well, congratulations. That part worked. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a thin, crumpled envelope. I wrote you this. The night you left. I was going to send it, but you vanished. No address. No trace. I carried it with me every time I thought I saw someone who looked like you. Every time I drove through small towns hoping for a miracle. I didn't take the envelope. Not then. Instead, I turned around, walked inside, and locked the door behind me without a word. My fingers were trembling, not from rage, from recognition. Not of her, but of myself. The man she had ruined. The one who still hadn't learned how to stop needing closure from a woman who packed betrayal between folded shirts. I thought she'd leave after that. But when I looked out the window 10 minutes later, she was still there. Sitting on the steps. Crying into her hands. And the envelope? Still on my porch. Burning a hole in my world without ever being opened. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the edge of my creaky bed, lights off, blinds closed, the envelope still untouched on the wooden table like a landmine I wasn't ready to step on. Outside, I could hear her car engine hum quietly now and then, like she was starting it just to stay warm, maybe convincing herself she'd only stay a little longer before giving up and driving off. But she didn't leave. At one point around 2 a.m. I pulled back the curtain an inch. Her silhouette was barely visible in the dark. Still sitting. Still waiting. Her coat wrapped around her like armor. Her head tilted back against the siding of the shack. I hated how familiar that posture looked, how many nights I'd seen her like that on our own porch after a fight, pretending she didn't care if I came back out or not. But this time was different. This time I wasn't going to walk out and make it better. The next morning I made coffee for one. I ignored the envelope. Ignored her. Ignored the buzzing ache behind my eyes. It wasn't until noon that I finally opened the door, mostly to make sure she hadn't frozen to death in the car. She was still there. Same coat. Same posture. But when she looked up, something in her face startled me, not regret. Not anger. But a quiet kind of terror, like she was afraid I'd slam the door again and that would be it. The end. For real. Before I could speak, she beat me to it. You don't have to let me in, she said softly, rising to her feet. I need to say some things. Not to fix anything. Not to win you back. I know what I did. But I need you to hear me. I stayed in the doorway, not offering even an inch. Say it then. She took a breath that sounded like it hurt. You think I left you for him. You think I planned it like some cold-blooded cheat. But I didn't. That weekend at the hotel wasn't about falling in love with someone else. It was about collapsing. Everything in me was broken. I wasn't running toward him, Darvin. I was trying to run away from everything. You. Myself. The guilt. The lies I'd been telling to keep the peace between us. I didn't flinch. So it's my fault now? She shook her head instantly, panicked. No. No, that's not what I meant. It was never your fault. You were too good to me. That was the problem. You gave me stability and safety, and I confused that for being trapped. I thought chaos meant passion. I thought predictability meant boredom. I didn't see how much I was unraveling until I saw you gone. You didn't look very unraveled in that photo, I said. My voice was dry as rust. You looked free. Her eyes filled. I was pretending. You think I didn't check my email every day after you left? You think I didn't pray for a text, a message, even just one angry sentence so I knew you still existed? You got what you wanted. Silence. I didn't want silence, she whispered. I wanted forgiveness. And then I wanted punishment. Then I wanted both at the same time. A long silence followed. The kind that only lives between two people who used to be everything. Finally, I picked up the envelope and held it in front of her. What's in this? A letter. The last thing I ever wrote before I realized I had no right to send it. I stared at it. I could feel its weight now, not just paper, but the weight of every word I had waited for and dreaded at the same time. You still have no right. I know. I won't read it. I figured. Then why give it to me? She looked at me then, really looked like she was memorizing me. Because even if you burn it, even if you throw it in the sea, it means I still tried. And with that she turned. No drama. No last glance. Just walked back to her car, started the engine, and rolled away down the gravel road like a ghost that didn't know whether it should haunt or disappear. I didn't go after her. But the envelope? I didn't burn it either. I left it there on the table unopened because sometimes the scariest truth isn't what someone tells you. It's what you already know and aren't ready to admit. The envelope sat untouched for 5 days. Every time I passed the table, my eyes flicked toward it like it was some wounded animal I was afraid would bite if I got too close. I told myself I didn't care what was inside, that her explanations didn't matter, that I was free now, that I had rebuilt something resembling peace. But peace doesn't creak at 3 a.m. Peace doesn't smell like the paper of an unopened letter. Peace doesn't sound like her voice echoing in your skull when the wind shifts. On the 6th night, I broke. I didn't read the letter all at once. I unfolded it carefully, like peeling open an old wound. The paper had creases so sharp it could have drawn blood. Her handwriting was familiar but shakier than I remembered. There were smudges in the ink she'd cried while writing it. Somehow I hated that more than if she hadn't. The letter wasn't long, but it was brutal. She started by saying she knew she didn't deserve forgiveness, that she wouldn't ask for it. She just wanted to tell the truth before it buried her. Not about him, she barely mentioned the other guy. What she wrote about was me. She said I was always kind. Too kind. That I made her feel safe but not seen. That she tried to tell me for years she was unraveling, but I was so focused on fixing everything I never saw the pieces falling off. That I'd become more of a caretaker than a partner. That when she cried, I offered silence instead of asking what she needed. That I thought patience was the same thing as love. She said the affair wasn't about lust. It was about feeling wanted. She hated herself for it. She never planned to act on it. But one night turned into 2. And when I didn't even notice she was gone, it broke her in a way she didn't know how to put back together. She ended the letter with one line. You were the only person I ever trusted, and I ruined that because I didn't know how to be loved the way you loved me. I stared at that sentence until it blurred. Until it wasn't even English anymore. I folded the letter up and left it on the floor. I didn't burn it. I didn't tear it up. I just let it sit there next to the boots I hadn't worn since the snow melted. And I sat in the dark for a long, long time. She hadn't just cheated on me. She dismantled me, piece by piece. And the worst part? I let her. I wanted so badly to be her anchor that I sank when she cut the rope. The next morning, I found something strange. A photo. Folded in half, tucked into the bottom corner of the envelope like it didn't want to be found. It was a picture of us years ago before everything broke. We were standing on a bridge in Rhode Island, her arms wrapped around my waist, my face sunburned, my expression goofy. But there was something written on the back. Just 4 words in pen, newer than the photo itself. I should have stayed here. I don't know why it hit so hard. But it did. Not because it was a confession, but because it was a memory I hadn't thought about in years, and she had. She remembered. The photo wasn't some accident. She'd kept it. Chosen it. I started shaking. That night, I packed a small bag. I wasn't going to find her. I wasn't going to fall back into her orbit. But I needed answers that couldn't be mailed. I needed to hear her say it again to my face, not through ink. Not on my porch. Not when I was too angry to feel anything but bitterness. I needed to know if she regretted it. Really regretted it. So I went back. Not home. Not yet. But back to the town I'd fled. Back to the place I told myself I'd never see again. It was like walking into a museum of pain. Every streetlight, every corner store, every smell felt familiar and toxic. I could feel my old self still floating in the air, the man she broke. I didn't tell her I was coming. But she was waiting. Somehow she knew. I didn't tell anyone I was back. I didn't even use my real name when I checked into the motel. I paid in cash, tucked my bag under the rusted bed frame, and sat on the mattress as the air conditioner hummed like it was trying to forget how to breathe. The walls were thin and smelled like detergent masking something worse. The kind of place you stay when you're running from someone or running toward them and not sure which is worse. I spent the first night doing nothing. Just sitting. Listening to every creak in the hallway, every drunk conversation outside, every TV flickering in someone else's life. I could have called her. I knew her number by memory even after all this time. I didn't need to look it up, but I didn't call. I needed her to feel it, the uncertainty. The silence she once weaponized. The next morning, I took the long way into town. I walked past the bakery where we used to get croissants on Sundays, the bookstore where she bought that dumb poetry collection she never finished, the laundromat where we once had a screaming match because she accidentally shrunk my favorite hoodie. Every street was soaked in memories I had tried to kill. And then I saw her. She was sitting on a bench outside the old co-op, hair pulled up, wrapped in that same green coat I remember hating because it always smelled like patchouli. She wasn't scrolling her phone. She wasn't crying. She was just sitting. Still. Like she knew I'd come eventually and had grown patient enough to wait. I didn't walk up to her right away. I stood across the street, hidden behind a parked truck, watching her like a coward. My heart was hammering. My palms were sweating. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around and vanish again. But my feet stayed planted. After 5 minutes, she looked up, and her eyes went wide. She didn't smile, didn't wave, didn't run. She just stood slowly like she was afraid she'd scare me off if she moved too fast. I crossed the street without a word. Stopped 3 feet away. Close enough to smell her perfume, different now. Softer. Like lilacs. Or regret. She was the first to speak. You came back. I stared at her. I didn't come for you. I know, she said, voice low. You came for the truth. I nodded once. We walked. Not far. Just down to the lake behind the town hall. A place we used to take the dogs before everything cracked. The water was still, the air cold enough to sting. We sat on a bench that had our names carved under it, D+T forever, childish and pathetic. It hadn't faded. Somehow nothing had. She didn't speak for a long time. Then, softly, you should hate me. I didn't correct her. Didn't argue. Because the truth was, I did. But it wasn't simple hatred. It was the kind that wraps itself around your ribs and doesn't let you breathe without pain. I've wanted to talk to you every day since you left, she whispered. I drove through towns I thought you might be in. I hired someone. He found your name on a boat repair invoice last month. That's how I knew. You spent money to find the man you cheated on? I spent everything. I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time I saw it. She wasn't trying to fix the past. She was trying to crawl out from under it. I didn't love him, she said suddenly. I didn't even like him most of the time. But I wanted to be wanted so badly I let myself rot in the illusion. Why didn't you tell me you were unhappy? I tried, she said. But you were so busy holding everything together, I didn't want to be the reason it fell apart. I laughed bitterly. So you became the reason. She didn't flinch. Yes. Silence again. A heavy one. The kind you can't fill with apologies. I wanted to come here and scream at you, I admitted. I wanted to humiliate you like you humiliated me. I wanted you to feel the kind of silence I lived in for 10 months. And now, I just want to know if you ever told me the truth. Even once. She looked at me with eyes full of things I didn't want to see. Every time I told you I loved you. I meant it. I just didn't love myself enough to live like I deserved you. The wind shifted, and I realized something horrifying. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel powerful. I felt tired. Like I had dragged myself across the country for a truth that changed nothing. We sat in silence until the sun dipped behind the trees. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. What's this? I asked warily. My will, she said quietly. My throat tightened. What the hell are you talking about? I'm not dying, she said quickly. But I was. Back then. Slowly. Inside. And I wrote this because I didn't think I'd ever get to speak to you again. I took it. My hands shook as I held it. Read it or don't, she said, standing up. But whatever you decide after. I won't follow you again. And just like that she walked away. No look back. No second try. Just silence, the kind that doesn't beg to be broken. I didn't read it at first. The folded paper sat on the nightstand in that creaky motel room while I lay awake staring at the ceiling, counting the stains, replaying her words over and over like a broken cassette I couldn't eject. I'm not dying, she had said. But her eyes, they told a different story. Not of illness, but of someone who had already prepared for their own erasure. I finally opened the envelope on the 3rd night after waking from a dream where she was knocking at my door only for me to find no one there. In the dream, she had left her shoes behind. That part stayed with me. Like she had been planning to stay but changed her mind last minute. The letter was dated 4 months after I disappeared. She started with a confession. The man she had cheated with had been married too. I didn't know that. She hadn't told me. But it made sense, the way she always seemed nervous, the way she refused to name him. His wife had found out. Left him. Took the kids. And unlike Triss, she didn't ask for explanations. She simply vanished. Clean. Final. The way I had tried to. What broke me wasn't that Triss had destroyed 2 lives. It was what came after. She wrote that the man Shane, his name was spiraled. That he blamed her for everything even though they both knew better. That one night he showed up at her door drunk, punched the siding, called her names she wouldn't repeat. She didn't let him in. But he stayed. Slept in his truck outside her house for 3 nights. Then disappeared. 2 weeks later he was found dead. Overdose. She didn't write it dramatically. Didn't describe the funeral or pretend she was mourning. She simply said, I wasn't sad he was gone. I was terrified of what I had done to someone else's world. She didn't reach out to me then, she said, because by that point she knew she had lost all right to speak my name out loud. But it didn't stop there. The letter kept going. She told me she had started therapy. She'd been sober for over a year. I hadn't known she drank. She confessed to things I never suspected. She'd lied about her job, lost it months before I left. She'd pawned off her grandmother's wedding ring. Lied to her sister about where I went. Lied to herself about what she wanted. But the part that shattered me? She said she had tried to follow me once 6 months ago. Said she'd heard from someone in a diner that a man named Darvin had helped fix a boat engine in exchange for shelter. She drove 6 hours that night just to reach the town. Found the dock. Sat in the car for 2 hours. Watched the workers. But she never got out. I saw you, she wrote. You were laughing with someone. Covered in grease. Alive. And I couldn't do it. I was so afraid that if I walked over to you, you'd look through me like I was a stranger. Or worse, you wouldn't look at all. I stared at that line for so long my vision blurred. I remember that day. I'd been helping an old man named Percy patch up his stubborn fishing boat. He paid me in warm soup and stories I didn't ask for. That day, I'd felt, for the first time, like maybe I wasn't a walking wound. And all the while, she had been 20 feet away, watching. Waiting. Wilting in the shadows. She ended the letter with this. I never asked you to come back. I still won't. But if you ever wonder whether I understood what I broke, this is your proof. I loved you. And I destroyed you. I loved you. And I hope someday you can rebuild yourself without the echo of my failure haunting you. I folded the paper slowly. No tears. No outburst. Just a cold wave of something I didn't know how to name. Closure? Maybe. Grief? Definitely. But also something else. Something sharper. A hollow realization that after everything, after betrayal, silence, distance, we had both become people who couldn't be repaired, only replaced. Not with new lovers, but with quieter versions of ourselves. Ghosts that wore our names but walked differently. I checked out of the motel the next morning without a destination. Left the key on the counter and ignored the clerk's half-hearted, "Have a good day." I didn't answer Tris's calls. Yes, she started calling. Quietly. Once a week. Just a missed call. No voicemail. Like a tap on the shoulder from a dream you don't want to revisit. Then, 2 days later, I received a message I didn't expect. It wasn't from Tris. It was from her sister. Just 5 words. You need to come now. I stared at the message from her sister, Elise, for nearly half an hour before I did anything. It was short. Cold. No punctuation. Just 5 flat words that somehow felt heavier than the entire letter Tris had left behind. You need to come now. It didn't say where. It didn't say why. But it didn't have to. There was only one place it could mean. I hadn't spoken to Elise since before everything unraveled. She was the one who told Tris not to marry me. Said I was too soft. Said I was the kind of man who'd forgive the unforgivable, and that made me dangerous to someone like her sister. I used to hate her for that. Now I just wondered how long she'd seen the end coming before we did. I called her back. It rang once. She picked up and spoke immediately. She's in the hospital. My chest hollowed out. What happened? There was a pause on the other end. Then, she collapsed. No one found her for 2 days. I only knew something was wrong because she didn't respond to my texts. And her neighbor said her lights had been off since Thursday. She's stable now. But she's not really speaking. She just kept saying your name. I couldn't think. Couldn't move. She asked for me? I finally choked out. No, Elise said flatly. She whispered it. Over and over. Like a chant. Like she was trying to call something back from the dead. I didn't ask what hospital. She knew I'd come. The drive was long, longer than it needed to be. I stopped 3 times, not for gas or food, but to breathe, to think, to scream silently in rest-stop bathrooms. Because part of me was furious that she still had that power, that after everything, my ribs still clenched when I heard her name. And yet the other part, the one I tried to kill with silence and time, still wanted to know if she was okay, still needed to see it. I arrived just after sunset. The hospital was smaller than I expected. Rural. Quiet. The kind of place where patients are known by first name and no one ever gets discharged without a nurse hugging them goodbye. I found Elise in the hallway outside the room. Arms crossed, dark circles under her eyes. She looked older. Or maybe I did. Or maybe pain just makes everyone look like they're fading. She's inside, she said, nodding toward the closed door. She's not really present, but she's awake. What happened to her? They're still running tests. Something with her kidneys. Dehydration. Stress. Malnutrition. They said she's been living off canned soup and black coffee for months. I swallowed hard. You want the truth? Elise asked, softer now. I didn't answer. She's been unraveling since you left. Not because she wanted you back, that came later. First, it was just guilt. It hollowed her out. She thought punishing herself would fix what she did. Thought being alone was justice. She lost her job. Sold everything. Barely eats. Barely sleeps. And the worst part, Elise looked away. She never once blamed you. Not even when I did. Not even when I said you were cruel for ghosting her. I wasn't cruel, I whispered. I know, she said. You were broken. I nodded slowly, then pushed open the door. The room was dim. She was curled on the bed like a child, wires taped to her arms, for running slowly. Her eyes were half open, staring at the ceiling like she was waiting for it to answer a question she hadn't dared to say out loud. She didn't move when I stepped in, but she blinked once, then again, then softly, barely above a breath, she said, "You came." I didn't reply. I pulled the chair up beside her and sat down. For a long time I didn't speak. I just watched her, not in judgment, not in pity, but in awe of how far someone can fall before anyone notices. Finally, I asked, "Why didn't you tell me how bad it got?" She turned her head slowly, eyes dull. "Because I thought I deserved it. No one deserves to waste away. I killed the one person who ever loved me honestly. I didn't know how else to live after that." I felt something twist in my gut. "You didn't kill me, Tris. I killed the version of you that could look at me without flinching." We were silent again. And then she reached under her pillow, weakly, clumsily, and pulled out something folded and worn. Another letter. "I started writing this one after the last," she said. "It's not for you. It's for me. But I need you to hold it. Because if I go, I don't want it found by strangers." I took it with shaking hands. Her fingers brushed mine. "I didn't ask you here to forgive me. I asked you here because I didn't want to vanish without you knowing. I never stopped loving you, even when I stopped loving myself. And I, for the first time in a long time, didn't know what to say. Because part of me still hated her. And part of me still wanted her to live." Tris fell asleep not long after handing me the letter. Her body was so still it made me nervous at first, but the monitor beside her beeped steadily, like a quiet metronome holding the last thread of rhythm in a song that almost fell apart. I sat there for hours. I didn't open the letter. I didn't need to. Not yet. I just held it in my palm like a living thing. It was warm from her hand. That meant something. Maybe everything. Because there was a time not so long ago when even the idea of touching something that belonged to her made me sick. But now it felt like history. Fragile, yes, but real. Something earned, not erased. When morning came, Elise returned with a nurse, and I stepped into the hallway to let them take vitals and adjust her for. I stood there watching the sunrise from a cracked window pane, wondering how something so simple could still look beautiful after everything. The sky didn't care what we'd done to each other. It just kept showing up. Like forgiveness, maybe. Later that morning, I walked back into the room and found Tris sitting up slowly, a pillow tucked behind her, hair a mess, but her eyes more alert. "I'm not going to die," she said, her voice dry but steady. "I didn't think you would." "You should have," she said with a crooked smile. "Would have saved you a lot of guilt." "I'm done carrying guilt that doesn't belong to me," I said. And I meant it. She looked at me for a long time, no tears, no speeches. Just a long, knowing look. "So what now?" she asked. I sighed, sat beside her again, and looked out the window with her. "Now you heal? For you. Not for me. Not to prove anything. And I'll go back to my little town, my broken boat engines, my seagulls." She nodded. "And after that?" I hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe I'll call. If you want me to." "I do." We sat there in silence again, but not the painful kind this time. Not the choking kind. It was still calm. Like two people who had walked through fire and somehow made it to the same patch of shade without knowing how. 3 days later, she was discharged. Elise took her home. I helped carry her bag, even though she protested. When we reached her porch, she turned to me and said something I'll never forget. "You came back. You didn't have to. But you did. That's more grace than I deserve." Grace doesn't work like that, I said. It's not earned. It's given. She leaned in, kissed me on the cheek, not romantic, not possessive, just real. A thank you written in skin. I left that day. Went back to my quiet life. Back to my small cabin, my part-time work, my quiet evenings with no music. But things were different. Not because she changed me again, but because I finally understood I had never needed to disappear to heal. I just needed time. We talk now. Not every day. Not about the past. Mostly about books or weird animals she sees on her walks or the soup she finally learned how to make without burning the pot. It's light, easy, careful, but every so often I visit. And when I do, we sit by that lake, the one where everything fell apart and somehow came back together, and we don't talk about what we lost. We talk about what we still have. No promises. No labels. Just two people who lived through the storm and figured out how to live afterward. Not perfect, but alive.